Hi, everyone. This is Dr. John Demartini. I see that people are coming in from various parts of the world, from Cape Town to Calgary to New Zealand, Australia, to Pretoria, to Texas, California. Anyway, thank you for joining me today. Coming in from all over the place. South Africa, Mexico, Florida. It's quite interesting to see where Mozambique, Illinois, this is Namibia, wow, Durban, Tunisia, Chile, wow, all over. Anyway, thank you for joining me. I'm going to do a little different format tonight. I'm not the master of technology, but I'm going to have some fun with relationship magic. So thank you for being with me. I'm going to be basically doing a bit of a presentation. And also at the very end, I'll be mentioning something about the breakthrough experience. And so I'll be letting you know about an opportunity and an offer that you have at the end. And we'll also do some Q&A. I'll do my best to keep them. Depending on how fast they come in, I'll try to do my best to read them. And I've had somebody trying to screen them. I sometimes have a host to do this, but I'm doing it today myself. So this is a good learning curve for me. So we'll have some fun. So I'd like to start off by first thanking you for joining me, wherever you're from and whatever time it is. And, you know, relationships are interesting things because the reality is that there's nobody that we ever interact with that we're not in a relationship with, whether it be our partner and spouse, whether it be our children, whether it be our parents, our siblings, our employees or our customers or our social life. Pretty well everybody we ever meet, we're going to be interacting and we're going to have some sort of relation with them. And so there are certain fundamental principles that stand the test of time that underlie relationship dynamics. And I'm going to do my best to share at least some of them tonight. I could probably go all day on them. So I'm going to just do the best I can with the time I have. And let's get to it. First of all, that every human being, regardless of gender, regardless of age, so this could be your child or your spouse or anybody, they live their life based on what they value most. Each person has a hierarchy of values, a set of priorities that they live their life by. And whatever is highest on their value, they're spontaneously inspired to fulfill. Whatever is lower on their value, they require outside motivation to get them to do. And as you go up the list of values, they become more intrinsic. And as you go down, they become more extrinsic. Now, this is basic information on values that I've presented before. But now that it applies to relationship, it's going to have a slightly different application. Because whatever is highest on our value, our life and our identity revolves around it. And I said again, whatever is highest on our value, our life and our identity revolves around it. Our purpose is expression of it. So we want to be loved and appreciated for who we are, and who we are is an expression of what we value most. So if your highest value is beautiful children and you're a mother and you have young children, you want to be loved and appreciated as a mother. If you're an entrepreneur and you want to run a business, you want to be loved and appreciated for the work that you do in the business world. And if you're a sports person, whatever your highest value is as a sports person, your identity revolves around it. You want to be loved and appreciated for being dedicated to sports. So every human being wants to be loved and appreciated for who they are, and who they are is an expression of what they value most. Now, that's great. And if you live by your highest values, you have fulfillment and you can love yourself. If you give yourself permission to live by your highest priorities every day, the more you live by your highest values, the more you feel appreciative and love of yourself for what you get to do, and you're grateful for your life. But now you got a new interesting twist to it. The second you get in relationship with somebody else, they have a different set of values. No two people have the same set of values. And there's a whole spectrum of values across society, from the similar values to moderately different to extremely opposite. And what's interesting is there's somebody out there with a complete opposite set of values that will probably come into your life and challenge you and won't understand who you are and what you're dedicated to and think it's crazy. But you'll be making sense out of your life and project your values onto people, and they'll be projecting their values onto people, and they'll be people with similar things that will get along and other people that will clash with each other. So it's not realistic to expect to have a complete agreement among value systems. That's just unrealistic because there's a whole spectrum. Now, when you find a mate, what's been shown when you're looking for a relationship, let's say we'll first start with intimate partnership. You're searching for those things that are similar to you so you can get along and relate to it. But if you had somebody that was exactly the same to you, it'd be like the Twilight Zone. It'd be boring. Imagine if the person next to you wanted to do everything you wanted to do exactly the way you wanted to do it, the time you wanted to do it, just wanted to please you all the time. And you get bored and you say, hey, grow up and get a life and challenge me a bit. And if they were completely different and they were completely opposite, you wouldn't relate to them and you'd be so challenged, you'd be burned out. So the ancient Greeks said, if you have too many similarities, you got boredom, and too many differences, you got burnout. And if you have a balance of similarities and differences, you have love. That means you have a balance of support and challenge, agreement, disagreement, cooperation, competition. That's actually a healthy one. If you get too many similarities and you agree with everything else, you get, like I said, bored and you stay juvenile and you don't really grow because it's the challenges that make you innovate and come up with new things and push you to grow. If you get too much challenge, the growth is too much. You just can't handle it. Too many changes. It's the same as accommodation. When you have assimilation when things are similar and accommodation when things are different in learning. You learn things that are the same thing, you get bored. If you learn things too much, too quick, you get burned out. So anytime you have a relationship, you're going to be looking for somebody that has a balance of similarities and differences, things you like and dislike, and attractions and repulsions. I jokingly say that lovemaking itself is a combination of attraction and repulsion, a balance of those two. So when you're in a relationship with somebody, no matter who they are, but we'll start with the intimate relationships, you're looking for somebody that supports you, but also challenges you, stands up to you. And the balance of those two is sort of a bantering mechanism where you have a blend of I like and dislike. And you're going to have those in your relationship. Love is going to be, the way I'm going to define it, is a synthesis and synchronistic complementary opposites. That means you're going to have a thesis and antithesis, a difference, but also synchronously, you're also going to have somebody that supports and gives you the side that's more similar. So this is called the law of similars and differences. And it's been known for centuries. And it's not really been improved upon by anybody in the field of relationship that I've seen. And so the first thing you understand that's what love is. It's a balance of support and challenge. So if you're looking for somebody that always supports you, that always agrees with you, always has peace and always has kindness and always has one-sidedness, that's not real. If I went up to you and I said to you, you're always kind, you're never cruel, you're always nice, you're never mean, you're always positive, you're never negative, you're always peaceful, you're never wrathful, you're always generous, you're never stingy, you're always considerate, you're never inconsiderate. And if I tried to describe you that way, your own bullshit meter would go off intuitively and say, that's not me. And if I went to you and I said, you're always mean, you're never nice, you're always cruel, you're never kind, you're always taking, you're never giving, you're always stingy, you're never generous, you're always wrathful, never peaceful, always negative, never positive, always inconsiderate, never considerate, your bullshit meter would go off. Your intuition would say, no, that's not me. But if I said to you, sometimes you're kind, sometimes you're cruel, sometimes you're nice, sometimes you're mean, sometimes you're positive, sometimes you're negative, sometimes you're generous, sometimes you're stingy, you would immediately go, yep, that's me. So the first real principle of relationships that you got to realize is that there's no such thing as a one-sided person. You're never going to get more support than challenge or more peace than war. You're going to have balance. And if you have that as an expectation, you have more resilience and adaptability than you do if you have a fantasy that they're supposed to support without ever challenge you, always be kind, never cruel. That's delusional. See, when we live by our highest values, we have the most resilience and adaptability. We have the most objectivity and most balanced orientation. We're able to embrace the two sides of ourselves and embrace the two sides of the person we care about. But when we're not fulfilled and not living in our highest values, and we're attempting to live by lower values, even though we can't sustain it long term, we attempt to do that. The unfulfillment that occurs makes us go into the amygdala, the more primitive part of the brain, that wants to avoid predator and seek prey, avoid pain, seek pleasure, avoid negative, seek positive, avoid difficulty, seek ease. And we're going to be searching for a relationship that's not available. In Buddhism, they say the desire for that which is unavailable and the desire to avoid that which is unavoidable is a source of human suffering. So we're not going to have a fulfilling relationship if we're searching for a one-sided relationship. Not possible. In reality, true love is a balance of the two together. And you have them. You can't even escape it. You can't get rid of half of yourself and learn to love yourself. You got to love all parts of yourself. You're the saint and the sinner, the hero, the villain, the virtue and the vice, all in one package. If I videotaped you 24 hours a day for about a year, I could easily edit out the hero and the villain. Somebody that liked and disliked, you might say. So you got to realize that it's unrealistic to expect a one-sided relationship with any one-sided person. It doesn't exist. Now, with that in mind, people are going to be dedicated to the fulfillment of their highest values. Every decision a person makes is going to be based on what they believe will give the greatest advantage over disadvantage, greatest reward over risk at any moment in time. So whatever the person that you're with in any relationship, we're using intimate right now, just know that whatever their highest value is what they're dedicated to fulfilling. That's who they are. Now, whatever that is, if you perceive them being dedicated to that is interfering and challenging you, and you're addicted to support without challenge, you're going to end up, because of the challenge, you're going to get self-righteous, you're going to tend to project your values onto them, and you're going to want to get them to live in your values. And I see this every week in the breakthrough experience. I see this in consulting. It's really quite amazing. It's really childish. It's really animalistic. The animal wants to avoid challenge and seek praise, and wants to, avoid predator and seek prey. And the reality is, true love is going to be transcendent to that, where you finally embrace both sides of yourself and the people that you're interacting with. So they're going to be dedicated to the fulfillment of their values. You're going to be dedicated to your values. So if you can't see how what they're dedicated to and who they are, their highest value is helping you fulfill what your highest value is, you're going to have a tendency to go into your amygdala, automatically want to avoid them, or desire to change them and project your values self-righteously on them and try to get them to fix. When you do, you projected a fantasy on them to live in your values, which isn't going to occur, and you'll end up activating what I call the ABCDFGHs of negativity. You'll have anger and aggression toward them. You'll blame and feel they betrayed you. You'll criticize them and challenge them. You'll feel despaired and despondent and depressed. You'll want to exit and escape the relationship. You'll feel it's futile and frustrating. You'll end up automatically being grouchy and have grief, and you'll end up hating and hurting. And that's because you're expecting them to live in your values, and you're expecting a pleasure without a pain, or a kind without a cruel, or whatever. And there is no relationship that isn't going to have both of those sides. You can't even do it to yourself. You build yourself up and beat yourself up. And you have a balance of those two in your life. And so to expect somebody else to not do that is delusional. The second you get cocky and proud, your purpose of your mate is going to end up being bring you back down. Because when you're actually cocky and proud and exaggerating yourself, you're not being yourself. You're actually being proud and puffed up. And their job is to bring you back into equilibrium, to get you in equanimity, to be able to have a balanced relationship. And if you end up beating yourself up, they're going to try to lift you up. So your relationship is going to help you be authentic. And it's going to tend to challenge you and support you, and challenge you and support you to keep you authentic. Because you're going to be vacillating and sometimes proud and sometimes humble, and you're going to be all over the place with your emotions at times. So their job is to get you in balance. Now, if you can't see how what they're dedicated to is serving you, and you can't see what you're dedicated to is serving them, you're going to have alternating monologues, not a dialogue in relationship. You're going to be wanting to change them or fix them or talk down to them, and they're going to not want to listen, and vice versa. They're going to talk down to you and you're going to listen. And these alternating monologues are miscommunicating. And the key is to ask a simple question. So here's the first practical thing that I would encourage you to write down and really get. And I get this in my book, The Heart of Love, and also in my Values Factor book. And I mentioned this in the Breakthrough Experience, and I show you how to do this in the Breakthrough Experience. Ask yourself, what specifically are the top 3 highest values of my mate, of this person I'm in relationship with? This could, again, apply to any relationship, but I'm right now talking about intimate relationships. If you go in there and do the value determination, Dr. Demartini's value determination process I have on my website, I would encourage you to do that for yourself and do that a number of times until you're certain you got it. And then I would have the person you're in a relationship with do the same. And you might say, well, you might go up to him and say, because we're developing a relationship, it would really mean a lot to me for me to be able to communicate effectively in what you value. It would really mean a lot if we went together and we did the value determination process to make sure that we're on the same page and we understand the values of each other. That way we can link values and communicate more effectively. But if you identify the top 3 values in the person you're in a relationship with, identify your top 3 values, you then ask this simple question: how specifically is this individual's top 3 highest values, and them being dedicated to it and committed to it and being focused on it and living it, how is it helping you fulfill what you value most, second most, and third most? And answer that. And I mean answer that 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 times. The more you answer that, the more you're going to appreciate them for who they are. Because when you start to appreciate and love people for who they are, they turn into who you love. But if you can't see how what they're dedicated to is serving you, you're going to want to fix them. And you're going to want to project a fantasy on them that they're supposed to live according to your values and support you, because you're addicted to support without challenge, or ease without difficulty, which is childish, and the amygdala instead of the executive center, where you embrace both sides of people. Because if you want to be loved for both sides, so do they. Then what you do is you go and ask, how specifically is what you're dedicated to, your top 3 values, how is it helping you, them fulfill their top 3 values? And you go and answer that 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 times. Don't stop until you can see so many connections between the 2 values that you can see that what they're dedicated to is serving you and what you're dedicated to serving them. Many people have the fantasy you're supposed to have the same values to have a relationship. Nope, not going to happen. You're never going to find somebody with exact same values. In fact, you'll be bored if you get with them, like the Twilight Zone. What you're going to do is you're going to find 2 people with complementary value systems that have a balance of support and challenge, and that they're going to end up living their life. You're going to live yours. You're going to overlap, and like a vesica Pisces of 2 overlapping circles, where the center of one is the circumference of the other, and the part that's in the center between them, the vesica Pisces, is the part that's actually the relationship. The rest of it's individuality. It's important to be able to see that what they're dedicated to is serving you, so you don't have to fix them. You can appreciate them for who they are. And the vice versa. If you can communicate and see how what you're dedicated to is serving them, you're more effective at communicating what you want in terms of what they want. And that's a huge difference if you can do that. Now, this occurs, like I said, not just in intimate relationships, but your children. Many times we self-righteously as parents think we know best and our values are more important and they have to learn from us. But that undermines the relationship and almost guarantees defiance, attention deficit, and many of the symptoms that children are labeled today. But if you actually go and find out what the children's values are and find out exactly how it serves you and do the same thing to them, you'll be a completely different relationship with your children. You'll talk and respect them in their value system, and as their value system is evolving, you'll communicate with them. So I encourage you to do this exercise every quarter. Determine each other's values and do the linking. I also want to share this. You know, if you've been to the breakthrough experience, some of you have, some of you haven't, you know I've introduced the Demartini method. And now in my online program, Alchemy of the Mind, I have the entire program all laid out for you of how to do the Demartini method. I can tell you it's a gold mine when it comes to relationships. If you want to put the magic in the relationship, take the time to do the Demartini method on the relationship you're in. And that what that does is that you're asking a simple question. I'll quickly go through those questions. You ask, what specific trait, action, inaction do I perceive in this person that they display and demonstrate that I admire or despise most? Because you're going to have things you like and dislike in the person. You define that. Then you go and add, and that can be in any area of life. Then you go and ask, and then that it can't be things that people have told you. It's got to be real things you perceive. It can't be vague generalities. It's got to be very specific actions or inactions. That's why I call them traits, actions, and inactions. Then the next step is to go and ask, go to a moment where and when you have displayed or demonstrated, or you perceive yourself displaying and demonstrating that same specific trait, action, inaction in your own life. And look at where you've done it, when you've done it, who you've done it to, and who's observed you doing it. By you doing that, you'll be able to see that what you see in them is inside you. And instead of being self-righteous or self-raunchous around them, you'll realize there's a reflection. You'll pluck the mote out of your own eye before you pluck it out of theirs. Once you own it, you're not too humble or too proud to admit what you see in them is inside you. I guarantee you that levels the playing field, makes it easier to have a relationship. That makes huge differences every weekend in the breakthrough experiences. I take people through it. We have at least 20% of the people in breakthrough that are doing their spouses or somebody that they're loving at least. Sometimes they're doing, it's even higher. I've seen up to 70% of the people doing spouses, family members, children, parents, etc. in breakthrough. The moment they start to level the playing field, they're already softening the judgment and opening the heart. Then you go and ask, go to the moment where and when this person displayed or demonstrated the specific trait, action, inaction that you most admired or despised. And in that moment, how specifically was it a drawback if you admired it, or a benefit if you despised it? And what that does is allows you to see both sides and bring your unconscious conscious, allows you to see both sides of their behavior. So you're not emotionally charged one way or the other. You're not infatuated with them because then you'll sacrifice yourself for them. You're not resentful of them because then you're trying to sacrifice them for you. When you're infatuated, you'll tend to walk on eggshells, caring carefully. When you're resentful to somebody, you'll tend to walk the other way, carelessly. But if you level the playing field and find the balance of it, you'll be caring. And caring is what keeps the rings on the finger. And then you go in there and ask, where and when have you displayed and demonstrated this? Go to the moment where and when you displayed these same traits, and how is it a drawback or benefit to the people you've displayed it to or the people that observed it? This takes away pride and shame and allows you to be more centered and authentic, where you're more balanced and in your highest values again, and you have more resilience and more adaptability. And you know, when you love and appreciate you, it's easier to get along with anybody. And then you go and ask, so go to a moment where and when this same person has, you perceive them displaying or demonstrating the opposite trait to the same people they demonstrated the trait to. Wow. What that does is it breaks the labels and it takes away the subjective bias that you might have on this person from all the wounds or all the pleasures, the pains and pleasures that you have perceived in this person. And it levels it, makes you realize that they're just a human being with both sides. And if you communicate in their values, they're going to be very nice to you. If you go against their values, they're going to be mean to you. That's realistic. That's the way life is. That's the way your customer will do it. That's the way your employee will do it. It's the way any relationship, even your children will do it. Then you go and ask this question. Go to the moment where and when this particular person, you perceive this person displaying or demonstrating the specific trait, action, inaction that you most admire or despise. You there? Where are you? When are you? You there? What's the content exactly? What's the context? And who are you doing it to? Who are they doing it to? And then ask, who is doing the opposite at that moment? Because what that does is it makes you awaken to what I call the loving matrix and the pair of opposites in your life. At any one moment, when you're observing things, if you see something you're attracted to or repelled from, you're only seeing your conscious half. You're not having the unconscious half, the other side. Because actually there's a matrix that's really love, that's a balance of opposites that are going on. But we sometimes bias our perception and block it out and divide our full conscious into conscious and unconscious halves and don't see it. But by doing what I call columns 6 and 13 in the Demartini method, where you actually get to see the synchronicity of opposites, that blows your mind, because you realize that if you're addicted to praise at work and your spouse is having to neutralize you at home, you'll see a pair of opposites and you realize that they're doing their job and keeping you centered. And if all of a sudden you're getting a lot of craziness at work and criticisms at work, and now all of a sudden your spouse is praising you, your partner's praising you, you'll now understand, oh, you realize that they're again trying to keep you in equilibrium. They're trying to keep you authentic. And it keeps you broadening your mind and allows you to see a bigger picture and realize that the person you're actually in relationship is actually keeping you authentic. And then you go to the last of the questions. Go to the moment where and when you perceive this person displaying or demonstrating the trait, action, and action you most admire or despise. And if at that moment they were to do the opposite, what would have been the benefit or the drawback of that? And this cracks any nightmares or fantasies that you may be imposing or projecting onto the person you're in a relationship with, and allows you to love and appreciate the person for who they are instead of comparing them to fantasies or breeding nightmares. So by going through that process and linking values that I said prior to that process, there's no way you can do that without having an open heart and appreciation. Every weekend in the breakthrough experience, I've had people that want to kill each other. I've had people getting ready to go through divorce. I've had people wanting to throw in the towel, people that are frustrated, people that are shutting down their sexuality, people that are wanting to blame and feel betrayed. I've seen just about every imaginable relationship stuff melt away and dissolve away when we do those two exercises. It's really quite amazing. If you actually have the opportunity to learn how to do those two mechanisms, which I do in the breakthrough experience, teach how to do that, it's a gold mine. Because if you're sitting there, if you don't know that, you haven't done everything you can with your relationship. And I've seen an enormous amount of relationships that have been on the blink, ready to go, brought back and to reactivated. And even intimacy that's been shut down, reactivated. So I cannot tell you how important it is. That's why I tell people to go to the breakthrough experience, because they learn something there that they can't learn just anywhere else. It's an experience, and I make you do it. So learning how to identify values, which also do in Breakthrough, learning how to link values, learning how to communicate in people's values, and learning how to do the Demartini method are two extremely valuable exercises you can do. And I recommend you do that every quarter. I don't recommend allowing you to wait till a crisis occurs, but to constantly keep current with what the values are, because their values are changing. Whoever you're in a relationship, their values are changing and they're evolving. You're not going to have the same values every quarter. Sometimes they may evolve a lot, some maybe just a little, but they're going to be evolving. So you need to be current with the updating the values, and current with the linking of values, and current with the Demartini method before it gets way out of line. So you get to the point where you go, oh, it's too much work, I give up. And that helps make a huge difference in there. So really the purpose of relationships is to teach you how to be authentic and to teach you to get back to your highest value, where you're most resilient, adaptable, and most productive. Relationships are trying to keep you centered so you can live in your heart and live fully. And we sometimes have fantasies that keep us from ever appreciating that. So you got to transcend. The difference between the animal and the human is the humans have the ability to be objective and balanced. And objectivity means even-minded. And the animals are basically subjective and always trying to avoid a pain and seek a pleasure. Imagine if you're going into a relationship, always trying to avoid a pain and seek a pleasure and expecting to have a loving relationship. Never going to happen. You're going to have false expectations. You're going to have the ABCDFGHs of negativity, and you're going to end up projecting out of the charges that you build up, the projecting a self-righteous attitude on them and expect them to live in your values. And the biggest delusions that people have in relationship is both of them are basically having fantasies of how life's supposed to be. They're being challenged. They go into self-righteousness. They project their values onto the other. They expect the other one to live in their thing. They got a stalemate. They got alternating monologues, no dialogue, and they wonder why it's not working. I can tell you right now, that's why I tell people, come to Breakthrough. You can empower all 7 areas of your life, but as far as relationships, it's a goldmine. It'll help you learn to communicate more effectively. Now, let's say that you're single, or married, acting single in some cases, and you're looking for this so-called perfect mate, soulmate. There's a law called the law of similars and differences, or the law of the one to many. When you're dating many, you're looking for that special one. And then when you get that special one, you're going to wonder about the many. This is not uncommon, primarily because our animal nature wants a pleasure without a pain. And the second we get into a relationship and we're dating a bunch of them, we think that if we get that one, we'll have somehow more advantage and disadvantage, more benefit than drawback, more pleasure than pain. But once we get that, we have this fantasy that gets broken. We find out that there's pleasure and pain equally. And then we start to think, well, maybe having a variety of people will be more pleasure than pain. But then when we get into the variety, we'll think, oh, well, finding one will be more pleasure than pain. The search for pleasure without pain and hedonistic pursuits of immediate gratification cost relationships. You got to realize that there's going to be pleasures and pains, cooperation, competition, similars and differences, support and challenge, eases and difficulties, kind and cruel, every pair of opposites you can imagine, 4,628 pairs of opposites, you might say, or traits that I've seen that people display. That's what shows up in a relationship. Now that leads me to a very crucial component of relationships. Very commonly in the Breakthrough experience, or in other programs I've asked, people come up to me, particularly women. I'd say 70% of the time it's women. They'll come up to me and said, I'm trying to find my mate. I'm trying to find my soulmate, as they call it, that special one person. And I said, no matter what I do, I just don't seem to run into him. I don't seem to get it. What's happening? Why am I interfering with that? Why am I sabotaging? Why am I not getting what I want? So what I'm about to share with you is an eye-opener. So again, you may want to write some of these things down and really think this through. First of all, I want you to know that I went through the Oxford Dictionary and I discovered that I had every single trait that I found in the dictionary. I was kind, cruel, nice, mean, honest, dishonest, pleasant, unpleasant, considerate, inconsiderate, generous, stingy, peaceful, wrathful. I had every trait. I found out as I was doing the Breakthrough experience for the last 30 years or so, that so do other people. And I've taken about 90,000 people through the reflection of ownership of traits, and people discover that they've never seen a trait in other people that they haven't owned. So I can make a statement here that you have every trait, and to live in a fantasy of trying to get rid of yourself or subjectively bias yourself and think you're always one side and not the other is delusional. And that will undermine your relationship if you have this fantasy that you're one-sided and you expect other people to be one-sided. Not going to happen. You got every trait. You might as well honor and appreciate. If you're trying to get rid of half of yourself, you'll never love yourself. If you're trying to get rid of half of your mate and fix them, all you're going to do is alienate them. And by the way, if they go out and leave and have the affair, don't think that they did this to you. Don't think you're a victim, an innocent victim. Look at the role you're playing in driving them out of your life. Because somehow, remember, that people just want to be loved and appreciated for who they are. Their highest values of that. If they don't feel that they're doing that, and they're going to make decisions based on more advantage and disadvantage, they're going to go find somebody else. People will circulate through society from those that value them least to those that value them most. So if you're not valuing them and you're not appreciating them, you're not doing some of the things I've just mentioned, you run the risk of them trying to find somebody else to do it. And they're not likely going to tell you that they're doing that until for sure they've got somebody they think is going to give them a greater advantage. Then they'll be open about it. Until then, they're going to hide it in most cases. But the thing is, anything you're not willing to do with your mate or for your mate or help them fulfill in their life, just know you're probably going to end up delegating it because somebody else is going to come in and take on that role. As you do columns 6 and 13 in the Demartini method, you'll realize that if you withdraw from your mate, somebody else comes onto them. And if you give them what they want, somebody else will leave. So if you don't want somebody to come into your mate's life, give them and try to help them fulfill their dreams. Because when you give them more of what than anybody else on the market can, you got the market. Just like a customer. If you think of the relationship as a customer and realize your customer is not loyal to you, they're loyal to their values. And if you fulfill those values better than anybody else, they stay with you as long as you do. And they look like a loyal customer, but they're really just loyal to their values. If you understand that, it's huge relief off your back. Now let's go back to the soulmate for a second. When people come up to me and says, I can't seem to find this soulmate, I tell them nothing's missing. And the hierarchy of your values is creating your mate in the form that you have. So everything that you are looking for is already in your life. And here's how you prove it. You make a list of every single thing that you're looking for in a mate. Well, let's say you make an exhaustive list of 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 or more things of everything you would love to have in a mate. Okay, you write all that down. This is what I would like. This is the thing that supports your values. As you write that down, that's great. That's whatever. That's the fantasy side. That's the ideal. Now, once you do that, now right across from it, let's say you have a page, a piece of paper, and on the far left column, well, in your case, this side, you write all the things you admire, then skip to halfway down through the page, halfway across the page, and now write down everything that's exact opposite of that. So if they're very good listener, poor listener. If they're very affectionate, non-affectionate. If they're there for you, they're distant. Whatever it is that you are wanting, intelligent, ignorant, hardworking, not lazy, or whatever it is, not diligent in their work. Whatever you're perceiving that you want, the idealisms, write down their opposites. Because the truth is, you're going to have both based on their individual values. See, a person's only committed to what they value most, and the area of their lowest values, they're not directly committed to it. They're not inspired by it. They procrastinate, hesitate, frustrate. So if you have a high value and what they have a low value, you'll label them lazy. But they're not lazy in their highest value. They're lazy in their lowest value. And really, lazy is just a label people put on people when they project their values onto other people and don't look carefully at where they're actually diligently focused and hardworking. I would be lazy when it comes to working out in a gym, but I'm very diligent when it comes to studying the laws of the universe and human behavior. So if you have a high value on working out, you're going to see me as lazy. If you have a high value on personal development and the laws of the universe, you're going to see me as extremely hardworking. So it all depends on the labels that people put on you based on their projected values. So first make a list of everything you're looking for, then halfway across the page, write down everything the opposite. And then know that's what you get. Because if I went to you and I said, you're always kind and never cruel, you couldn't say it. So if you say they're always hardworking, never lazy, not going to find, but they're going to find both, depending on their values, depending on their needs at that moment. Now, once you do that, now right to the right of those, you write down one or many, male or female, close or distant, who in your life is demonstrating that trait in your life currently. And I assure you, I've been doing this for many, many years. I assure you, you won't come across a trait that you're looking for or its opposite trait that you won't find in your life. It's there. It's just in a form you're not honoring and recognizing, acknowledging. So you basically sit down and write, this is what I'm looking for. This is its opposite. And these are the three people that right now in my life are providing that in my life. So if I want somebody hardworking and I don't have a man in my life and you're a woman, and you look at who is demonstrating hardworking, it may be my boss, it may be my coworker, it may be my best friend's husband. but you may be seeing that you're interacting on a daily or weekly basis with those people that are hardworking in your life, but it's in that form. It's diversified into 3 people in this case. Then you go and look at who's doing the opposite. Again, you're going to find one or many, male or female, close or distant. Somebody's demonstrating that trait in your life. Once you realize that that first trait is there and the anti-trait is there, the opposite trait, you realize, oh, that means that even though I've been looking for it in a particular person, the reality is it's not missing in my life. It's there. Because if you're actually thinking things are missing, you'll be desperately looking for things. And people, when they think you're desperate, they don't want a desperate person. They want somebody who's empowered. See, a relationship, and I've done it in the breakthrough experience, I've proven that women want an individual man that's good looking, that's intelligent, that's ambitious, that has resources, that wants to be with them, that is socially savvy, that is physically fit, and is inspired. And so do men, believe it or not. The stereotype is that men just want a beautiful girl, but the reality is that's a rental program, not a purchase plan. They want somebody that's empowered in all areas, just like the woman does. So if all of a sudden you go in there and you realize that what you're looking for is there, it takes away the desperateness and makes you realize that your unconscious motives based on your own values is creating it in that form and diversifying it for a reason. Then you go to the next 2, the next trait you admire and dislike, and you find out who is doing it and who's demonstrating it in your life. I've done this 1,000 times, and I assure you it's there. Who is demonstrating it in your life? You look at all through your life, your social life, your work life, your friends, your family. Who is demonstrating that trait in your life? And the opposite trait. It could be one or many, male or female, close or distant, etc. Then go down the next one and go through every one of the traits and the opposite traits until you realize nothing is missing in your life. And I guarantee it'll be eye-opening, and I guarantee it'll be empowering, and I'll guarantee you'll go, whoa, I realize that you'll have an insight that you realize that the hierarchy of your values are creating that form because you perceived that there's more advantage and disadvantage putting it in that form. And that usually means when it's diversified into not just one person, but in many people, that means that you've had wounds in the past dealing with one person. And so you don't want to take the risk of going through those wounds again. So you're avoiding that by dispersing it into other people to get what you want without the traps and the downsides you had with the things that you thought you wanted in the past. For instance, I'll give an example. I had this lady that basically had this boyfriend that was very good looking. She really liked good looking guys. She would like a trophy, right? But every girl was after him, and he was flinging around, and he was always flirting, and she got fed up with it. And it was always in a situation. And finally, he was getting all this attention from everybody else. She says, I don't want to live like this. So she ended up, instead of having a guy in her life that was good looking, she ended up hanging around with people, good looking husbands of best friends, good looking guys at work, and clients that were coming in that were paying her now that she didn't feel that she had to have a relationship with, but she got good looks and attractive men in her life. And then she looked at a guy, another girl that basically had a guy that was extremely wealthy, but a control freak. And so they go, wow, I wish I could have somebody that's incredible resource, but he was a control freak and wanted her not to work and to take care of her and made her dependent. And she lost her career and then eventually dumped her for another person. And then she was trapped, didn't have a career. So she had to re-scramble herself and get back on her feet. So she swore in her head, I'm not doing that again. I'm going to make sure I keep my own independence and have my own income. And I'm not going to take it, go after this wealthy guy anymore because that's too risky. I'd rather just work with a guy that's wealthy or have friends that are wealthy and everything else, but not be a situation where I'm controlled by it. So you'll find out that if you have a series of wounds in the past that have been pain without pleasure in your memories and stored in your subconscious mind, you'll unconsciously or subconsciously be driven to go find this opposite of that. And therefore, you'll create the soulmate, if you will, the person you're looking for in a diversified form to protect you from the one. When you have more pains associated with being with the one than the many, you move unconsciously and create the soulmate with all the traits in a diversified form in many people. But if you see more drawbacks and pains with the many, you'll immediately convert it back to the one. We all know people that can tell you, I'm looking for 3 years to find my man. 5 years I've been trying to find my man. But deep inside, unconscious, they're protecting themselves and from the wounds of the past. Then you have other people, they go from one relationship and a week later, they got another one. And they can stay in that relationship for 5 years, no problem. They'll go right to the next one. And you think, how did they do that? It's because their hierarchy of values. The hierarchy of your values dictate your destiny. And if you have a higher value on being with one than many, you'll manifest one very quickly. If you have a higher value on diversifying it to protect yourself from the wounds, you'll immediately go back into the many. So just know that nothing's missing in your life. The hierarchy of your values are dictating it. In the breakthrough experience, I show you how to dissolve the wounds, dissolve the baggage, so you can open up the doorway to have it in one, or at least one to few. I actually know that the law of the one to many, which is an ancient Greek law, shows that when you got the many, you're looking for the one. When you got the one, you're wondering about the many. So nature finds a blend of that, and you want one special mate and many friends that fill in the gaps the one mate may not display. In other words, you may have a guy that's there and he just doesn't want to dance with you, but you might have friends that dance, and you get that solved that way without necessarily having to leave the husband and go off and have another affair or something. So just know that the law of the one to many rules relationships, and nothing's missing. It's in a form you may not be honoring. But if you have more wounds with one, you'll go to the many. If you have more wounds than one at many, go to the one. And I train people in the breakthrough experience how to balance those back out. I can shift the ratios by showing you and stacking up the drawbacks of the many and get you back. And you can usually find person. On average, it takes 3 weeks to find a new person in your life the second you dissolve that and level the playing field. That's why I tell people come to the breakthrough experience. They come to the breakthrough experience so I can help them, and I can show them exactly what to do and train them exactly what to do. And they can methodically do that and change their dynamic. And all of a sudden, they're now receptive. They don't have the wounds that are protecting them. They didn't even know they had the wounds until they actually saw and went through the process. So that's very valuable in relationship dynamic. But know that every relationship is striving to fulfill their values. And if your values aren't being met on it, you're going to want to avoid those and go find something else. But you got to have realistic expectations. You're never going to get a relationship that's all support, never challenge, all kind, never cruel, all positive, never negative. That's why if you're looking for a mate that's one-sided, you'll be looking for eternity. But if you embrace both sides of life and about a mate, you have the open door for a relationship. Clear the wounds, open the door, allow the one and the many to join into friendships and a personal, intimate partner, and give yourself permission to love again. That's why I want people to come to the breakthrough experience, because I just know there's no way you can go through the Demartini method without having a greater degree of love and appreciation for the self, which helps you in relationship, and others. And every time you do, your self-worth goes up, and the worthiness of attracting a higher quality mate goes up. Because a lot of times people are sitting there devaluing themselves and feeling ashamed. I actually had a woman that came to the breakthrough experience that said to me, I've had 5 failed relationships. And I said, there is no such thing. She says, well, I've had 5 failed relationships. No, you had 5 relationships that each time you're learning something, and you've had fantasies that need to be cracked in each relationship, and you're growing. It's not a failure. It's only a failure if you have a fantasy on how it's supposed to be, some stereotypical, fantasy land about how it's supposed to be forever or something. Instead of, did you learn something? Did you grow? Did you discover something about yourself? Did you shatter some fantasies and get grounded and start to appreciate your life and the people you're with? Did you learn how to communicate more effectively? Did you learn how to appreciate people and their values? If so, it's not a failed relationship. It's growth. You may have dated many people before you end up married. And if you didn't call those failures, you could just call them the learning processes. Well, sometimes we impulsively go into a relationship in an infatuation. We have a fantasy. You'd be surprised how many people come to the breakthrough experience actually having they're having an affair with a fantasy figure and punishing their partner and wondering why they're distant and they're not intimate and they're going off with somebody else because they have a fantasy about who they're supposed to be instead of loving them for who they are. I see this every time. That's why going back and linking values and doing the Demartini method can be, I'm telling you, a gold mine. If you haven't come to the breakthrough experience, please come. Let me show you how to do this. It's a gold mine. It can help you stabilize relationships, or at least help you have one in your life, in a sense of the one, if you want from the one at the many to the one. Now, I've gone over some of the basic principles here. I spent about 45 minutes on this. I figured I would do that, and then I would turn it to some of the questions that may be coming up. And then I'll come back to some more dialogue and then talk about the opportunities that are here. So I'll go here, and I see some questions coming up here. The first one, it says, I went to the breakthrough experience. This is Veronica. And went to the breakthrough experience 10 years ago. It was very helpful, but I didn't review for a long time. And there are offers for previous participants. Yeah, that's not a relationship exactly question. So I need to look here and screen them out better. But yes, you can always come to the breakthrough experience, and it's a refresher's price. And we'd love to have you come back and do it, because the people that have come many times, they can come and own the traits, the greats, because sometimes we compare ourselves to other people, put them on pedestals, minimize ourselves, and then withdraw and try to be somebody we're not. And then we end up beating ourselves up and not appreciating ourselves. And then that makes it difficult to have relationships. So come back and own the traits, the greats, or clear out the baggage on yourself and love yourself. When you love you, that's easier for other people to love you. When you appreciate you, it's easier for other people to appreciate you. That can be very helpful. Here's another one from Linda. Can the same energetic balance be achieved if I do the intimate relationship work alone without my partner being willing or present? Well, ideally, if you have a partner, if they can do the same exercise, that's fabulous, but it's not required. If you go and do the value linking process between you and your partner, and you basically do the Demartini method on them, because of quantum entangled effects of the brain, there's no way you're not going to have an impact on them. That's they're more likely to want to then do it themselves with you if you do it first on them and do it with yourself. So it doesn't matter. If they both come, that's great. That's ideal. That's the best. When I see couples come to the breakthrough, I know that's going to step them up to a new level. But even if only one person comes the first time and then the next one comes the next time, that's okay. But without a doubt, you can make a difference in that. It says, for example, could I determine my partner's values on my own? Yes, absolutely. Oops, it's passing by. Yes. And let's say, linking my own values to find the benefits of support and challenge. Yes, all that's doable within yourself. And it's not impossible to do that. I guarantee I've had enough people in breakthrough who have done the method and learned how to communicate, gone back to their spouse, transformed relationships, and then inspired them by what they learned. And then that person may come in the future or may not. But if they do, then they get the benefit of both knowing the same principles and having the advantage of that knowledge. To me, I can't imagine going through life without that knowledge. And yet that's not being taught anywhere. That's why I tell people to come to the breakthrough. It says here, let's see. I says, I've had many bosses over many years. Can I do the breakthrough experience on them altogether? This is from Christopher. Just know that you can do the same traits, actions, inactions that occur in multiple people, but I encourage people to do one person at a time. The spillover effect of doing the trait will spill over to many different people. So what you do is you go in there and you stick to one person at a time to learn the method. Once you've learned the method, you can take it and do each one methodically, one by one. But it's wise to not try to do them all at once, because the specifics of doing the Demartini method is very specific to the person. And doing one person at a time is a wiser approach to get the most impact. So, but you can then one by one methodically go through each of your bosses or each of the relationships and clear them out. I've seen individuals who have done that. It's transformed their relationship. I had a guy and girl in Colorado that the guy came to the breakthrough experience and he said, I'm done, I'm over. And he was actually starting to have another relationship with somebody else. He did the Demartini method on his wife. They hadn't gone through separation divorce yet. And when he got through, he was in tears. And he goes, I can't believe that I didn't know this. And I had all this, I didn't have the opportunity to do this method. Right now, I feel love for my person. And then he broke the infatuation with the girlfriend and he opened his relationship back with his wife and he realized, I can't believe I did do it. He then took her to the next breakthrough experience and she did it. And that broke their relationship to another level. But at the same time, I've also seen people that are they're done with their relationship. They've already started other relationships and they want to be able to break up smoothly. The method can be also used to appreciate the person for the chapter in the life that they've given. So either way, that can happen. Okay, now let's see if I can go to the next one here. What if you're not being fulfilled sexually? How can you see that in someone else? Okay. You're not seeing it in somebody else, you're seeing it inside yourself. If all of a sudden you're in a relationship and you're perceiving, you ask the question, what specific trait, action do I perceive this person displaying or demonstrating that I'm fulfilled in? And maybe you put down sexually repressed, not open up intimately, not allowing themselves to have intimacy. The question is that people are sexual creatures. They're not going to get rid of their sexuality. It's going to pivot into one way or the other. So the matter is, if they've shut down on you, there's something inside the dynamic that they're perceiving you're doing that's making them shut down. And you may be pressuring them by expecting it more than they have the libido for. It may be the way you're doing it is too quick. You got to look and go to the mate and say to your spouse or your partner and say, honey, I've noticed that our relationship, our sexual drives have dropped. Our intimacy has dropped off to less frequent. I'd love to know what specifically, I want you to feel open and comfortable enough to tell me. I won't react. What specifically am I doing in my part in participating in this dynamic? What am I doing that's turning you off or shutting you down? Or is it because of my pressure? Is it because I'm not? It may be that you're not driven. It may be because you're looking for somebody in all 7 areas. You may have been really driven. You may have retired and no longer have drive, and that turns them off. Or you may have done something really silly and foolish, and it makes them feel like, well, you're not intelligent after all. You may be one of those areas, but you got to be open enough to hear what they have to say, because you might find that they go off with somebody else and they got a good active sex life again. But somehow in the dynamic, it shut down because they're perceiving more drawbacks and benefits. Intimacy reawakens the second you level the playing field and open the communication again. I've seen it over and over again. People that haven't had sex for years, all of a sudden get back in and they're in the game again because they've broken through all the baggage that they've accumulated. And they've got to the point where they're punishing each other and they're basically labeling each other. So yes, doing that process can be very helpful, but you got to own the trait. You got to own, where are you non-sexual? You may think somebody is non-sexual when they won't do a classical sexual act. They may see you as non-sexual when you're not able to say things that are supportive at night, or you may not be able to take and do jobs around the house. I don't know. Sex has many different connotations, and you got to look at where you're playing that role in their perception and find out and own that. It levels the playing field, it humbles you, and it allows you to communicate. You can't communicate unless you got equality. If you're above them talking down, you're shutting down the sexuality. And you're also doing, if you're talking up, they go, hey, you're a doormat, and you're sitting there infatuated, and they want a match. Everybody wants a match. They want somebody they can banter with and they can feel that they respect. And praise plus reprimand builds respect, not one or the other. Anyway, it says here, let's see, I got to go to the next one here. Okay, for ages, I'm looking for a partner. What dresses a certain way? That dresses a certain way. Nothing unusual at all. Many I admire do so, but it seems I can't get them. Okay, well, you may have a certain preference for certain styles of dress or certain standards of dress. The question is, are you dressing that way yourself? It's kind of unrealistic to expect somebody else to be a certain way if you're not playing in the same standard. Are you hanging out and living in the lifestyle where those people hang out? Otherwise, that's not likely. Then if you communicated that to the person and you communicated it in a way where you're, in a sense, giving them a reward in their values for doing it. If you just say, well, you don't dress nicely and that doesn't work for me, you're shutting them down. But if you find out what their values are, and then you say, I was thinking about this, and I was thinking this would help you fulfill some of the values. When I see this, it's such an inspiration to when you dress like this, and I think it'll help us get what your values are. If you talk in a different way, like a customer, you might be surprised. You might be able to automatically assist them in doing that. But if you try to force them to be somebody you're not, that means you're holding on to a fantasy of who they're supposed to be instead of honoring who they are. So this is wise to do this before the relationship culminates into marriage, hopefully, because if you have this fantasy, you're going to fix them, you're going to change them. It's not as likely unless you learn how to communicate their values. And slow but surely, by learning how to communicate their values, you can add new insights and new repertoire to their life that may be matching what you want. But you can't do it by projection. You can't do it by demands. You can only do it by communicating what you would love them to do in terms of their value and show them how they'll win. When they see that, I worked with a couple from Ohio that came into New York, and the wife did. And I worked with the wife, and I spent a whole day training on how to get what she wanted from him. And beforehand, they were bickering and arguing, and they weren't divorce material, but they were definitely having problems. And by the end of the day, she was masterful of getting what she wanted from him and getting him to do what she wanted by communicating effectively in his values. So he sent her to me, paid for me to spend a day working with her, and yet I trained her how to get what she wanted from him, and he was thankful at the end because he was now being respected in his language and his value system to get what she wanted. It was right interest, just like a sales process. If you talk in terms of the buyer's needs and values and help them and care about them, they'll help you get what you want in life. It's really quite amazing. It says here, do you believe that your list of values differ from what we write down to what we have to do? I have to work 7 days a week to make ends meet at home, but it's not a case of a high value priority in life. It's a case of survival. Okay, now I get this every week in the Breakthrough Experience, and I'm going to say something you're not probably going to want to hear, but you need to hear it. There's no way you're going to spend that many hours at work without getting some value met. But what you think it is, the work that you love, maybe that's not it. But it may be the financial security that it brings. Or otherwise, you would have gone out and done something different. If you would have thought you could make more income doing something else, you do that. So you're not going to work for the work. You're going to work because it brings you financial security, or it's giving you an advancement, or it's giving you something. But nobody's going to do something without getting a value out of it. So if you're spending in the value determination process, I ask, how do you spend your time? If you're spending 8 or 10 hours a day doing work, there's something there that you value, or you wouldn't be doing it. I guarantee it. But it may be financial security. It may be opportunity. It may be satisfying a family need. It may be the idea that you want to make sure that there's enough finances to pay for all the bills you have. But you may not have an alternative entrepreneurial plan, or you may not confidently believe that you could go out and get a better job. So that's where you are. So it's not that you're not getting a value out of it, but the value you're perceiving you're doing it for is not what you're actually doing it for. So being honest about what you're really doing those hours on is very crucial. That's why it's saying the value determination in the breakthrough, what specifically do you fill your space with and your time with, and what does it really represent? What does it really mean? And you'll find out when somebody's spending 8 or 10 hours a day, even though they claim they hate it. I have people coming to me in a breakthrough experience weekly, and they say, this relationship is killing me. You got to help me get out of it. It's killing me. I just can't live like this anymore. And 10 years later, they're saying the same thing and they're staying there. The reason being is because no matter what they say, I don't pay attention to what they say. I pay attention to what they do. If they believe that it was really that terrible and there was more disadvantage and advantage about being there, they'd be gone. Because every decision is going to be based on what gives them advantages. So if they're there, it's because they think there's more advantage and disadvantage staying there. So you got to go and find the unconscious motives why you're there. There's a reason why you're at work. And there's an unconscious motive, and that's what your real value is. That's why you need to find it. That's why you have to do the value determination accurately and not superficially. If you need help on that, call our helpline when you're doing the value determination process, or come to the breakthrough so I can personally help you. It makes a difference. It says, do you believe that your list of values, I said that one. That one, we got it. Now let's go to the next one. Let's see here. When an individual doesn't want to get past of the image in their mind of their ex-mate sleeping another person. Okay, this is a good one. Let's say you've had a relationship and it broke up, or maybe it's not broken up. Maybe you're one of you had an affair. Okay, you weren't fulfilled. Your values weren't being met. If you're sitting there and you're on the side that they had the affair and you're playing the innocent victim, that to me is foolish. I confront people every weekend that want to run the tape and run their little story to the little therapist. And, I'm a victim and everything else. That's not where you're empowered. There's a role you're playing in that dynamic, and there's a benefit to you. And if you go and do the Demartini method on it, you'll discover it, and you'll empower yourself, and then you'll communicate with respect to the person, and you'll look at what role has been played in there and the benefits of that, and it helps you go on. Because otherwise, you're going to run from that and run right into it again because you didn't get your lesson. But if they're doing that, and they've had it, they've got this image that, oh, my God, they've had sex with somebody else. Well, I want you to stop and just kind of wake up on this. Most people, before they get married, not all, but most people have been when dating and dated many different people. And some of them have had sexual intimacy with some of those partners. And some of those partners have had sexual intimacy with other partners prior to meeting and dating. And it's interesting is if you're dating somebody and they're still dating somebody else, but you're intrigued by them and you'd like to win them over, but they haven't finished the relationship with somebody else, and they're hopefully you're trying to get them from that, even though they're making love with that person for weeks prior to you finally getting them and winning them over. You may have made love with somebody that's making love with somebody else, and for some reason you tolerated that until finally you win and you conquered them, and now you think there's a possession and ownership. Now, if they go out and do that, oh my God, it's the end of the world. Well, that's silly. It's life. Sex is part of life, but it's not the end of the world if somebody's had an affair on you. Some people have actually grown from it. Some relationships have actually taken off and they've gotten more empowered because of those experiences, and they learn things. So it's not the end of the world. But what you do is you go find out where have you done it, the same thing in your own form. Maybe you didn't have an affair with somebody else, sleep with somebody else. Maybe you're actually having closeness with your kids, and the kids are sleeping in the bed with you. Or maybe you're going and working out and getting in shape at the gym every morning when there's 20 guys checking you out. You got to look at where you're doing the same trade and own the trade. Then you got to find out, how does it serve you? Because anything you don't see how it serves you that you resent is going to occupy space and time in your mind and run you until you balance it. And if you don't see that, you're going to be preoccupied by it. So go find how it serves you, because if you sit there and run this story about how it's a terrible thing and everything else, you're staying in a childish behavior, in my opinion. You're not a victim of history. You can be a master of destiny by asking, how did it serve? It's not what happens to you, it's how you perceive it. You have control of your perceptions, decisions, and actions. You can turn it into an opportunity, and you can do something amazing with it. You could also ask yourself, what role did I play in manifesting that? Because there may be an unconscious motive that you're unfulfilled in the relationship. You may be pushing that person away and they're going off with somebody else, and there's an unconscious motive, but you're just frightened of being alone. So you're holding on to that when really you don't want to be in it. I've seen that many, many times. The real truth is you want to be set. You're trying to be set free from that, but you have no courage to go on your own because you don't have a backup plan. If you had a backup plan, they did it. You go, oh, thank God they got somebody else and they're making love with somebody else. They're free. You can go on with your life now. It's all perceptions. And that's why in the breakthrough experience, I help people wrap their heads around these things differently so they don't have to be distracted by this and live in fantasies about how it's supposed to be and get grounded on human behavior. People are not committed. That somebody's not committed to you. They're committed to their values. If you don't fulfill their values, they're going to go somewhere else. If you're not intimately helping them fulfill those values, well, don't be surprised. Anything you're not willing to do with your mate, don't be surprised. You may have to delegate. And those people are out there are working for you to teach you how to communicate effectively, or how to appreciate the person, or how to listen to your unconscious whisper to move on in your life. Because maybe you're not fulfilled and maybe you're not realizing you're alienating the person and they're feeling the same way. You got to be honest with what's going on if you really want to grow. That's why in the breakthrough experience, I kind of confront that, break this victim mentality and get in there and look at what's really happening and save you a lot of aggravation in the future. Because otherwise you'll just keep repeating the same cycle, because anything you don't learn to love and appreciate tends to repeat itself in your life to get that lesson. Okay, let's see. I've got just another one here. What is the best way to work with these questions myself if my spouse is not interested in participating? Well, I've sort of said that. If you do all the work yourself, it's not going to harm the relationship dynamic. You're going to appreciate your mate more. And then when you do, you might be able to communicate in their values why them participating in some of these behaviors could be helpful to them. Because if they see you helping and appreciating them more, they're going to be more interested in whatever it is. Because if they see you learning something and then you judge them for it, they're going to say, I don't want to be involved in that. Look at the pain I'm going through doing that. But if you go and you appreciate them and you communicate more effectively, then they'll say, what have you been doing? Because whatever it is has changed. I've been doing this. Would you like to join me on that? They're more receptive to it, talking their values. How important it is to live in the now and give up the past and not being anxious about the future? Well, that's great. It's an idealism. It's true. But the question is, in my observation in 46 years of human behavior, I've known for 46 years, be in the now. It's a nice, esoteric statement. The question is, anytime you have an experience that you perceive to be more negative than positive, more pain than pleasure, more loss than gain, your brain stores that in your subconscious mind and causes immediate impulses or instincts to avoid it or to seek its opposite automatically until you bring it back to balance. So anything that you haven't balanced in your life is going to run your life, and it's going to make you be frightened of the past, right? Or guilt of the past or frightened of the past, and it's going to have the resentment of the past, or it's going to give you fear or fantasies of the future. Every week in the breakthrough experience, I go through there and I dissolve those, and I let them have less noise in the brain, and they get to know what it's like to be present. There is a science of being present, and it's based on the questions you ask. I call it the Demartini method, and it's very powerful, and it can make a difference in all aspects of your life. Because remember, this all applies not just to intimate relationships, but your children, your colleagues, your customers, your socialite, anybody you're in a relationship with, the same thing occurs. You can have a business partnership and they can have an affair with another company and leave you. And the same thing as the intimacy at home with your spouse. Your children can have it. If they're not feeling fulfilled, they can run away from home and go off with somebody else and live with a gang, and that'll be their new family. So it's no different in relationship, whatever the form of relationship is. Your customer goes somewhere else and has an affair with another competitor. So just know that this is part of life. Yeah, and it's all feedback to guide you to learn to live more resiliently and adaptively and more authentically. I think that's everything that's going on in life is a feedback to get you to be authentic and to live by your highest values. Ultimately, that's what I explained in the breakthrough and how that works. And it's amazing. And literally every aspect on your health. I mean, even your health is giving you feedback to help you in relationships. Your social life is giving you feedback. Your intellect, you won't have a clear consciousness if you're not in love and you're sitting there with resentments and infatuations because they occupy space and time and mind and run you. So every part of your life is trying to feedback to every other part to try to guide you to live a holistic and a very empowered life. And relationships is one of the crucial ones. And so if you want to give up the past and not be anxious of the future, dissolve the resentments of the past and the pains of the past by asking, how did they serve you? If you're grateful for what you got, you have more to be grateful. It says, I've been single for 8 years and I found myself in a comfort zone and unable to have someone in my life. It always seems like I'm taking on a burden. Why do I feel this way? Okay, I've been single for 8 years. I know this is going to probably not it's not going to be what you want to hear, but you somehow have more advantage than disadvantage doing that in your life. So the question you want to ask is, give yourself a rating on the 7 areas of life. It's a really eye-opener. On a 1 to 10 scale, where are you? Are you highly intelligent? Are you highly business savvy? Are you highly financial, viable? Do you have a vast fortune? Do you have a great history of loving relationships and closeness? Are you socially savvy? Are you physically fit and a handsome person? Are you inspired by your life? If you don't have a lot to offer, why would somebody be with you? That's a good question you want to ask yourself. I asked that to a lady in Calgary one time, and she was saying, well, my boyfriend won't commit to me. And really, so why would he need to commit to you? What are you offering him? And when she went through it, she realized that she was playing underdog and was demanding it. And it's usually the underdog that already wants the commitment. The overdog doesn't want to hurry up and get the person tied down. They want to keep their freedom open in case they get a better deal. But the person who's the underdog always wants to hurry up and hold the person and grab a hold of them before they find out that they're not as powerful as they give the impression. So if you're having difficulties for 8 years and you're being single, you've not found yourself in a comfort zone, it's because you perceive from past wounds or past pains that there's more advantage and disadvantage being in that situation. You may have tried to pursue your career, and every time you did and you had a relationship, it's distracting. Or you may have gotten to yourself, build wealth in, and you got in a relationship and it's costly. Or you may have got into an intimate relationship and you found yourself not being fulfilled, and you go, yeah, I want to have a variety of people open to, and I don't want to be just tied with one. Or you may be in a social situation and you lost your friends over that one relationship. Look back at the wounds you have, come to the breakthrough experience, and let me go show you how to dissolve those wounds and basically get going forward with your life. But you got to be really honest with yourself, because sometimes people say they want things, but their life demonstrates something different. I go by what their life demonstrates, not their statements. And I find out what their unconscious motives are for why they have what they have. And I assure you they're there. I've not seen one case without them. So it's about asking the right questions to make it revealed to you. But somewhere in the past, if you went through the Demartini method on every relationship you've had that's in any way that you've had a pain associated with it, clear that, and then ask, how is being with one person helping you get what you want in life? You'll be more apt to open the doorway for a relationship. But right now, if you have the way you have it, somehow you've seen more drawbacks and benefits to the relationship. It says here, if I'm single and I'm finding a partner is a 0 to 3% on my list of highest values. How do I increase it on my list of values? Oh, that's a good one. That's coming in from Chantel. Yeah, Chantel. Thank you, Chantel. So what happens is if you go in there and you see that they're low on your values, well, first of all, are you sure you want to raise them? That's a lot of times you have a fantasy, you want them, but reality is you've had it. I had a lady in Arizona that said she just wanted to mate and everything else, and she was running a major company. And when she really looked honestly, she really didn't have time for a mate. It was distracting, and she ended up getting guys in her ideas that were not empowered, and she ended up having to take care of them like a kid, and she had to pay for things, and she said, I'm not doing that again. Because she was afraid of actually being with somebody that was an equal, because she didn't want to have, she had with one guy that she had that was more powerful than her, and she felt that she was disempowered, and she said, I'm not doing that again. So she kept dating guys that were less powerful so she could always have an escape and a reason not to be tied down. It's really quite interesting how we do that unconsciously. But if you really want to raise a value on it, you stack up the benefits of having all those traits and anti-traits that I mentioned and stack those benefits up and being with one person. And if you can have more advantage listed than disadvantage, your mind will start to see it, because everything that's high in your value, you see opportunities, you take advantage of them, and you act. But if it's not really high in your values, you won't see the opportunities. They may be all around you, but you won't notice them. You can't see them. Just like a mother who has a high value on children going into malls, she can see children's items, but she can't see business items. She has a selective bias to, selective biased attention to those things that are valuable to her, but she won't see things that are low on her values. Where a husband may have just the opposite. He'll have a high value on business materials and won't see children's materials. We filter our reality out. And if we really don't have a value in relationships, we'll filter out the ones right in front of us. We can't see them. And we may be having it. I've had people come up to me and said, I've been dating this guy. I've been friends with this guy for 20 years. And then all of a sudden my values shifted. And now all of a sudden I fell in love with this guy. And she says, now I'm inspired to be with him. But for 20 years, we've been friends. And that's because she had a shift of values. And now she could see what was in front of her the whole time. He had affection for her and she couldn't see it. So your values dictate that. So you stack up the benefits of the traits, actions you're looking for and their opposites, and stack them up. And when the benefits outweigh the drawbacks of being with one person with those traits, you open the doorway. But as long as you see more drawbacks and benefits, you'll keep it away from you. And right now, you got to be honest. You also know if you have a high value in business, you want to ask, how is having a relationship going to help my business, and how is building a business helping my relationship? The more you link values together, the more they enhance each other, and the more the values are separated from each other, the more they hinder each other. By linking them to your highest values and stacking up general benefits, you increase the probability of being open to have a relationship. But I go by what your actions are more so than what you say. Let's see, a few more questions here, and we'll call it to, we'll do something else here. What happens when you do these exercises and dissolve those fantasies, but your partner doesn't do the same? Doesn't the level of understanding have to at least be the same? Not necessarily, because when you actually appreciate them for who they are, they don't have to change. But if you're expecting them to grow in the same way you're growing, in the same direction, you're going to be projecting your values onto them. I'm always amazed at people come into the breakthrough experience and they say, well, I've been growing in my personal development, but my wife isn't. Oh, really? Well, she's actually has a value on her family, and she's growing and all about the families and how to raise the children and watch them grow. And you're missing out on that because you're focused on where you're growing. And you're expecting her to grow in the same areas you're growing. But people grow in the areas of their own highest values, not in the other person's values. So a lot of times people are thinking the other person's not growing, but they are, but they're just growing in their values, not yours. So you got to find out how their values serve you to appreciate where they're growing. When you do, you won't put them in the pit, you'll put them across from you and you have an equal relationship. So if you dissolve your fantasies about them and you appreciate them for who they are, because we've got to realize that there's no way they can feel loved if they're being compared to a fantasy. And I've had people coming up to me and say, well, my wife's having an affair. Great. So what drove her to have the affair? Well, I don't know. She just has an affair. She's not loyal. And I said, no, those are labels. What is it that you're doing that she's not being fulfilled in? What role are you playing in that? Well, I don't know. I can't see it. And I said, no, look again and be accountable. Otherwise, you're going to be a victim and you're going to not own the trait. So, okay. And you realize that she has a value on these things. The people she's having an affair on is providing those things. You weren't willing to do it. You were preoccupied with what was valuable to you. You didn't make any links. You didn't level the playing field. And she's now looking for somebody to fulfill her life. She deserves to have fulfillment in life. If you really loved her, you'd want her to be fulfilled. And if she's not being fulfilled with you, then you got to be honest with you. Are you willing to go and do what it takes to help her be fulfilled? Or are you going to basically live in a fantasy that she's supposed to just live in your values? That's not going to happen. And in the process of doing that, if you find that out and you got a fantasy, clear your fantasy. Dissolve your fantasy, because a lot of people are having affairs with fantasy figures. I've asked people jokingly, particularly men, but I do it to women too, but mainly men. I said, how many men here feel like you're being punished for something you don't know what you've done? And you're supposed to read their mind and you're supposed to know what they're expecting. And if you don't do it, they punish you. And it's constant like that. And they go, well, I get that all the time. And I said, well, why don't you sit down and communicate with them and ask them what they really want and have a dialogue with them? Because if they're expecting something that's not in your value system, then they have to communicate why doing it will help you fulfill your values. And you got to work that out together. And you can work that out together. You can both break your fantasies and get grounded. Because I have people quite often in the breakthrough experience that have this fantasy that their husband's supposed to be loyal to them no matter what, because they've now got a ring. Well, that's delusional. It's childish. It's like some fantasy that you get from some religious dogma. That's not real, and it doesn't happen. That's like expecting somebody to be a loyal customer for the rest of your life. Once you have them, they'll never leave you. No, their value, they were going to get their values met. If you do that on a relationship, you get the same thing. If you think of it mercantile, and you think that a relationship is a customer, you'd go a lot farther. Keep the customer in mind. Keep your relationship in mind if you want it. And if you don't, admit it to yourself. If it's not high enough on your values to maintain it, then be willing to have somebody else participate in that relationship and have an open dynamic. That happens too. There's no rules out there. You got to realize there's no absolute rules about how relationships have to be. There's a whole spectrum of relationship dynamics out there, and there's a place for every one of them. And no one of them are right or wrong, etc. But just know that everybody's going to want to fulfill their values. And if you basically aren't fulfilling their values, somebody else is going to. That's the basic thing. Okay, let's see here. It says, hi, Manuela. You are the same question that you asked to find out you will also see that life shows it. Oh, that's somebody else answering somebody else's question. How do we find out the other person's most important values? I've just said, go online, go to the Demartini method, value determination process on my website, drdemartini.com, and you and they can go through it. Or you can ask the questions and look honestly, but you better confirm it with that person. The best way to do it is to go up to them and say, you know what, Joe, we've been together for 2 months now, or 6 months, or a year, or 10 years. And I feel that you deserve to be appreciated for who you are. And I know that you have a set of values in life that you want to fulfill. And if I knew what they were, and I knew exactly what was really important to you, and I didn't guess, and I didn't project expectations and false assumptions, it would probably help our relationship. Would you be willing to spend some time with me going through the value determination process so we can learn what's really important to each of us, so we have a higher probability of developing a great relationship that will last? I rarely run into somebody that will deny or avoid doing the exercise if you present it in that way. It says here, this is from Harsha, the girl I'm in relationship with broke up with me recently because she still loves her ex. Now I don't know what to do. She cannot lose anyone in her life, it seems, and she wants me to be her best friend, be her friend. Okay, well, she's made a decision that she wants to position you as a friendship. Now, you may not be ready or willing to handle it as a friendship, but you might want to write down, since she's already made a decision, to ask, what's the benefit of having her as a friend? And what's the drawback of continually being with somebody whose heart is no longer with you? You know, I mean, if you keep her as a friend, that could be great. But if she's off with somebody else, you want to honor her. You want her to be fulfilled. Why would you want to be with somebody you don't want to see fulfilled in life? If she's not fulfilled with you, then honor him in finding somebody that fulfills them. I know that sounds shocking to some people, but it's reality. If you really care about them, you'd want them fulfilled. And if somebody else can fulfill their life more effectively, great. Honor that. Turn into a friend, and then go and be set free of being in a relationship that's not fulfilled for you. Because that's not going to be fulfilling. If somebody doesn't really want to be with you, why would you want to keep holding on to them and have cathexia of the libido and be putting all your energy into somebody that's not interested? If they're interested, they're interested. If they're not, honor that. But don't get attached. Break your infatuation. Come to the breakthrough experience. Let me do the infatuation phase of the Demartini method. Break that, clear it, set you free, appreciate them, honor them, call them up and say, thank you for the time we've had together. Thank you for having the courage to be true to yourself. Thank you for setting me free, because there's no way I was going to be able to provide all the things you wanted, and set me free to go out and find somebody that is more in line and more of a match. Thank you. That's the best thing I can say. There's absolutely no reason why you can't do that. Oop, looks like our time is coming to an end here. I'll do one more question. Let's see. Oop, I got that one. That's not spinning. I think that's it. Well, I guess it's, I hope this last hour and 15 or 20 minutes has been helpful to you. I can't imagine that there's some of the things I've said, it wouldn't be at least some eye-opening in there to some of you. It's my hope anyway. But I'd like to share, just like I said in the very beginning, I'd like to share with you an opportunity that I know can make a difference in your life. I've been doing seminars now for 46 years. And for 30 years almost, I've been doing a program called the Breakthrough Experience. I mentioned it a number of times. It helps you manage your emotions, just as it says here, overcome challenges, transform relationships, clarify vision and mission, expand your leadership skills, and help you empower all 7 areas of your life. It's 24 to 26 hours of me on the weekend. It's an amazing thing. I've done it 1,047 times or something or more. And I love doing it because I've watched lives change. I watch people literally transform their lives in front of them. If you're having a relationship challenge, please come to the Breakthrough Experience. I can guarantee you, you're going to learn something you won't learn anywhere else on this planet. What I've seen week after week after week of people open your hearts. Anybody who's been to the Breakthrough Experience will contest to it on these comments here, or anybody you'll ever meet that's been to the Breakthrough will tell you they've learned something there they could have gone their whole life and never learned about relationships, about all 7 areas of life, on how to empower them. I believe that a person here is to master all 7 areas of life. Relationship is just one of them. It's a major one, but you're here to master all of them. And if you're not empowering all areas of your life, you're going to be overpowered. And people in relationship want somebody empowered. So the program is designed to help you empower all 7 areas of life. And there's no way you can come there without an expanded awareness and skills and tools you can take home and immediately, and we make you do them right there. So you learn how to do them. You learn the Demartini method. You learn the value application. You learn how to own the traits of great so you're not minimizing yourself. You learn a tremendous amount. And so I just want to share that with, because I know the Breakthrough Experience can make a difference in people's lives, particularly people who are having relationship challenges. That's one of the most common things I see in the program. And relationship problems are in all areas: customer relations, business relations, employee relations, social relationships, and definitely marriages and children. So the Breakthrough Experience is what I present. I have myself and other facilitators that are helping. That way nobody is left out. Everybody gets special attention. And I'm doing the entire thing and going through it and making sure that everybody has the Breakthrough Experience, which is why I stay sometimes till midnight or 1 a.m. if necessary, to make sure that nobody leaves there without amazing breakthroughs. And I just want to make a special offer to you for the people who are watching this right now. The Breakthrough Experience is normally a certain price, but I'm going to offer it at 10% less tonight, because I want you to be able to take action on it. I know that if you take the action and come and join me on that, you're going to change the dynamic. I really believe that if you come to the Breakthrough Experience and learn what you're going to learn about relationships there, and actually do the method and owning the traits of the people you're doing and learn what I've just went over, I don't believe you'll ever see relationships the same way. You won't have to be trapped in the same dynamics you may have been trapped in repeatedly. You're set free from a lot of stuff that you would go through your life and never learn. I ask people at the end of the program, did you learn something here that you could have gone your whole life and never learned? And every hand goes up. So I'm just to give you an inspiration to want to make a decision and come and join me and spend 24 to 6 hours with me. It's usually averages around 26, actually. I want you to know that I'm going to give you my Inspired Destiny free to make a decision. It's an online course. It's worth $400 US. It's over 4 hours of very powerful information on how to start now, so you don't have to wait to the next breakthrough. Start right now, the second you get online with it, and you can start building an Inspired Destiny. It's going to be talking about values and about structuring your life and prioritizing your life and not letting distractions interfere with you, because you don't want a life of quiet desperation. You want a life of inspiration, and you want to grow your self-worth. You want to expand, and you want to do empowerment in all areas. So between the Inspired Destiny, which is a precursor for the Breakthrough Experience, prepare, and the Breakthrough Experience with a special offer, 10% off plus the $400 off. So that's quite a bit off compared to the normal price. And you're going to have literally 30 hours of information from me. And you really stop and look at what that cost. That's very little for what you're talking about. It's like about $40 an hour to spend time with me. And I'm absolutely certain I'm going to give you more than that, way more than that. In fact, that's going to mind blow you with what we're going to present. You're going to learn something there you're never going to learn anywhere else. I have people that have relationship challenges that have changed. I've had people that have health issues because they've got, imagine if you're going through and you're in a relationship, you're angry and you're bitter and you're frustrated and you're trapped and you have to depend on the person and you're doing it and you're not fulfilled. The stress levels on that, the effects on health, the feeling of not nurturing, what it does to the breast of a female, what it does to the reproductive organs, what it does to the gut, the cardiovascular conditions, the health is affected by it. And every area of your life is affected by not having relationships work. And so by doing the Breakthrough Experience and learning how to overcome those things and use the tools that I give you, it's going to help not only your relationship, it's going to help you all areas. Because if you're not inspired by it, I had a gentleman not too long ago that didn't want to grow his wealth because he had a sense he was going to get divorced. And for 3 years, he was sitting on the fence and he kept himself from growing wealth for 3 years because of his resentment. because he thought if I do get a divorce, I don't want to get half of that. I mean, silly, crazy stuff that people do. Then the breakthrough experience we clear. I've seen people also in business, and they don't know how to prioritize their life and juggle their life, so they don't have time for a relationship. And then it goes blank, and then they take their business and divide it up in half because they didn't know how to communicate effectively in values. They didn't know how to relate, didn't know how to prioritize, all of which I covered in the breakthrough experience. I've also had people that are sitting there feeling like they're plateaued and they can't get past a certain level economically. And they don't realize that their self-worth is there, and it's because they're subordinating to other people that didn't have a value on wealth, and they're trying to please those people, and they're trapped. And I show them how to transcend that, own the traits of greats, do the Demartini method themselves to value themselves, and all of a sudden they're spontaneously able to get more and feel worthy of more income. So I could go on and on and on in stories about people that have been to the breakthrough experience. But if you're having challenges in a relationship or any of those 7 areas of life, come with Inspired Destiny to get you started, 10% off to get you over the hump. I'm giving it the best price I can give it to you, and I guarantee you're going to say thank you if you come. You're going to learn something there. At the end of the breakthrough, just this week in London, at the end of it, I think everybody that attended it, literally one by one, came up and gave a hug and a handshake and a kiss or whatever it is, and a big picture. And it took almost an hour to have everybody leave because they all want to be thankful. And I just say that there's no way you can go to breakthrough without expanding who you are and play a bigger game in the field of possibility. So click on the side here, wherever the click is to join up on the breakthrough experience, and come and join me at the breakthrough experience. I guarantee it'll help you in relationships in all areas of your life. I've been doing it for nearly 30 years. About 90,000 people have been through this program, and I've done it in many places around the world, almost every single week. And there's nothing I love doing more than watching people's lives change and transforming their life. So come and let me help you do that. Let me help you in a relationship, the challenge you have, or business, or finances, or health, or whatever it is. I got background in all those areas. And in Breakthrough, you get to ask any question about anything we can do to help you in any area of your life. But if you've got a relationship process, come and do the method and learn how to do the values. It can make a difference. Please don't forget what I gave you on the method today and the information I gave on relationships. And go now and sign up for the Breakthrough Experience, wherever it is, whether it's in Europe or United States or Asia or Australia or wherever it is, New Zealand, wherever I'm doing it, find a way of coming there. You'll say thank you. So I've said my relationship program tonight. I know that I gave you some value out of it. I hope that you got the most out of it. And I look forward to being able to see you at the Breakthrough Experience. Go and sign up now. You'll say thank you. And I look forward to seeing you there and giving you a big hug and help. I just look forward to helping you break through whatever you see is in the way and turn it on the way. But there's no reason for you to have the baggage anymore. Let's get free and let's get forward and let's go moving. And so thank you for joining me. I will say, the gentleman that David just said, I've done the Breakthrough Experience. I'll do it again. I have people that do it many times, not because they failed the first time, but because what it's done for them has been so enormous. They come back and they just keep empowering themselves. They come and learn how to own the traits, the greats, and expedite their growth. They come and dissolve all the relationship stuff they've ever had. They make sure that they clear and keep their relationships current. And they just come around and be inspired by all the different stories and all the transformations that are there. It's just an amazing experience of the weekend. And I want you to have that experience too. So come and sign up now. Come and join me. Let's spend 26 hours together. Let's answer questions together, and let's show you how to master your life. So thank you for being with me tonight. I look forward to seeing you at the Breakthrough Experience. And thank you for your questions. Thank you for wherever you came around the world and spending the last two and a half hours with me. I appreciate it. It helps me fulfill my dreams. I hope I can fulfill yours. I'll see you at the Breakthrough Experience.